It is a spring morning, sometime in the 1950s, in the North Cornish town of Egloshayle. The railway station here is situated on the long, straggling single-track North Cornwall line that makes its way from Halwell Junction through Launceston and Egloshayle to the fishing port of Padstow. When the line was built, Egloshayle, the station that serves Wadebridge, was the terminus of the line and the headquarters of the North Cornwall Railway Company, and that explains why such a grand station building was built in this small town. Of course, when the line terminated here, many travellers had to be catered for before making onward journeys by road to the many delights of the North Cornish coast, such as Boscastle, Tintagel, Newquay, and many other resorts that became famous in later years. So to cater for them, the North Cornwall Railway built a station hotel in a rather Tudor style, and this building survives to serve not only the local population, but many of the local railwaymen to this very day. With the arrival of the railway, accommodation had to be found for the many staff who were to man this lonely outpost, and so the North Cornwall Company built a terrace of houses adjacent to the station. Named Prideaux Terrace, in honour of the local Prideaux-Brune family, who were promoters and directors of the railway, this still provides accommodation for many of the people who work on the railway. Of course, the Egloshayle station master was much too important a person to live in a terraced house, and so adjacent to Prideaux Terrace, a separate detached house was provided for his use. And you will notice that over the years this house has acquired a garage, and even the station master now has his own car. Over the years, with the extension of the line through to Padstow and the increase in rail traffic that followed, many of the facilities at Egloshayle were enlarged and modernised, and one of these was the locomotive shed. Situated many miles from its parent depot at Exmouth Junction, this provides locomotives for trains starting their journeys at Padstow, for the local services run from here to Bodmin, and is also home to the famous Beatty well tanks, retained here for so many years to work the lightly laid clay branch to Wenford Bridge. With the increasing traffic, it also proved necessary to increase the goods facilities at Egloshayle, and it will be noticed that most of these extensions were made using buildings built in red brick rather than the local native Cornish grey stone. The goods shed here is still handling a reasonable amount of traffic, but things are gradually beginning to decline. One of the most interesting features at Egloshayle is the signalling, for it was chosen some years ago by the London and South Western Railway as the site for an experimental installation of their low-pressure pneumatic signalling. The former east and west boxes, which had controlled the layout here, were removed, and this new central box provided to control the entire layout. Remnants of the old signalling, however, can still be seen. The recess where the east box stood is still there, although becoming overgrown, and the lower storey of the west box was built into a small line-side hut. Of course, the original LSWR signals are long gone, replaced by the Southern Railway with their standard products. And you can see here the down starting signal for trains heading towards Padstow. This is a typical Southern Railway rail-built signal, an example of economy and perhaps early recycling. If you look lower down the post, you'll be able to see the air cylinder that operates the signal from the lever frame in the box. All of the points at Egloshayle, apart from those that are operated by hand levers, are similarly worked by the low pressure pneumatic system. And here we can see a couple of the point mechanisms along with the line side cabinets housing some of the control valves and equipment. So let's watch as the station comes to life this spring morning. First thing to happen is that the BT well tank stationed here as station pilot comes off shed and begins some shunting. The first job for the well tank is to remove some wagons from the coal stage siding. But to do this, it will first have to shunt the empty clay wagons that arrived yesterday and that will later go to Wenford Bridge. Having moved the clay wagons so that it can access the coal stage, the well tank now goes and picks up the wagons from there. The two wagons pulled from the coal stage comprise an empty one that brought loco coal up from Padstow yesterday, and a loaded one that has to go to the clay dries at Wenford Bridge, and the well tank now propels this back onto the clay wagons that it shunted earlier. The well tank pulls forward with the empty coal wagon, but there will now be a lull in the shunting because the first service locomotive is due to leave the shed. The first service engine of the day is N-Class Mogul number 31406, and this is going to work light engine tender first to Padstow, ready to work a freight train later in the morning. we move to the far end of the layout to watch as 31406 draws onto the North Cornwall line and comes to a stand behind the home signal. The signal clears and 31406 moves back into the station. Three 11406 draws up to the signal box and comes to a stand awaiting the tablet to occupy the single line through to Padstow. With the starting signal cleared, 31406 leaves Egloshayle and departs for Padstow. With 31406 now departed, the BT well tank can complete its shunt. It does this by placing the empty coal wagon on the departure road for the loco shed. From here it will be collected by the next end class that comes off shed, which is going to work forward to Padstow with a train of empty coal wagons. Having deposited the wagon, the well tank then runs out onto the main line and down into the station, where it will stable for most of the day between its duties. From the home signal on the bottoming line, there is actually no fixed signal to allow the well tank to run into the bay siding where it will stable. This was a common arrangement on the Southern, and instead of a fixed signal, a bell is used to indicate to the driver that the route is set to where his train wants to go. The bell, known as a shunting bell, is housed in the small cabinet at the base of the signal, and in this particular case 4 rings on the bell will signify that the road is safely set into the down yard. The well tank runs in across the points and stables in the bay siding, where it will remain for most of the day. The next move is the second N-class mogul off shed. In this case it is number 31843, a rather grimier member of the class than the one we saw depart earlier. (31843) backs up to the coal wagon that the well tank left, ready to propel it out onto the main line. With her train checked over and the right of way given, 31843 departs with the empty coal wagons towards Padstow. With its preparations completed, the T9 for Padstow moves off shed. With the freight train still occupying the single line section to Padstow, the T9 runs down and stops by the signal box to wake the road. Notice on the left hand side of this view the small shed for housing permanent way department trolleys. Being as the Padstow, North Cornwall and Bodmin branches are all single lines, the permanent way engineers use motorised trolleys to travel to and from their sites of work. The motor trolleys live in this timber shed, and alongside can be seen one of the flat trolleys that they use for carrying their tools and materials, and these are either towed or propelled by the motorised trolley themselves. Eventually the freight train shunts inside clear at Padstow, the T9 gets the road and departs tender first. Next from the shed is the Ivet tank for the Bodmin North service. These LMS designed engines have become very popular on the Southern for workings, especially on many of the branch lines, and Bodmin North to Padstow is no exception. The Ivet backs onto its train in platform 3. This is formed of ex-Maunsell coaches, cascaded from mainline workings onto secondary routes such as the North Cornwall and the Bodmin branches. There are 2 more engines remaining on the shed, and the first of these now moves forward. In common with many of the remoter parts of the southern network, Egloshayle has a daily service to Waterloo, and this is provided by a portion of the Atlantic Coast Express, which is worked by a Bulleid Pacific. The final engine to come forward on the shed is another BT well tank, and this is the one that is diagrammed to work the Wengford Bridge service. Earlier on I mentioned that Egloshayle has 3 BT well tanks, and here is the third. 30587 is currently out of service, receiving some attention, and the fitters can be seen here working on it in one of the short sidings that radiate from the turntable. Behind is a rarity in the West Country, an LNWR coach, stabled here to provide dormitory accommodation for the extra crews that have to be drafted in to work a train from Egloshayle in the summer service. I also mentioned earlier some remnants of the old signalling that can be seen at Egloshayle, and this little line-side hut next to where 30587 is being worked on is the remains of the Egloshayle West box. Activity at the station is now beginning to increase, and outside 2 buses have arrived. The first of these is a Bristol LS single-decker which will work on the 122 service through to Bude. Behind it is a Western National Bristol double-decker which has worked in from the new key direction. Both of these buses are here at this time because the Bodmin North train will take a number of school children to school in Bodmin. The station is also about to receive its first passenger service arrival, but surprisingly enough, this is not a southern service. Instead, it's a service provided by the Western region that runs through from Bodmin Road to Padstow. The Western trains are an interesting feature of the operation here, and several will be seen during the day. This Western service is typical of many of that region's branch trains. A small prairie, in this case number 4589 of St Blaise, towing the familiar B-set coaches. With her station work done, 4589 pulls away to Padstow.